Hey everyone, it's Sherry with Squatchable, and today's encounter is incredible. It's amazing. I love it. It's one that came from a gentleman named Adam, and he describes in great detail the interaction that he and his nephew had with a juvenile Bigfoot in the Cherokee National Forest along the border of North Carolina and Tennessee. Stick around to hear it. When all of this took place, I had recently moved from Ireland to the USA, specifically the North Carolina-Tennessee border. I'll spare you a lot of the details because I'd be writing for days, and to protect my sister, her family, and home, I'll keep her location vague, but it's basically sitting on a woodland and forest expanse that continues on to the Cherokee National Park. I will try to keep to the most significant encounters and how everything played out, because it's hard to even know where to begin, so much has happened. I guess the first day I noticed things was a few weeks after I arrived. I was pretty much settled into my new environment and in awe of everything around me. Ireland is pretty much a bubble compared to this place. It was early July and it was so humid and there was a dead heat in the air. I was laying on the wooden swing chair on the back decking on my phone chatting to a friend, basically relaxing and enjoying the weather, and yeah, kind of melting in the heat and turning a lovely shade of pink. It was evening time, and I hung up the phone and lay there gathering my thoughts, getting the last few rays before going back inside. As I sat there, I began doodling on the back of my notepad when I heard bangs coming from just inside the tree line, about half a football pitch distance away. It sounded like someone hitting a tree hard, like with the flat of a hurley or something harder. It was definitely wood on wood, loud bangs, as loud and sudden as gunshots. Startled and confused, I scanned the area but saw nothing. Strange, I thought, and went back inside. There's someone out back, I told my sister, maybe cutting timber or something. She looked at me, confused, and said there shouldn't be anyone on or near the property, even in the woodland out back, especially not cutting timber. I explained what happened, and we walked out back and across to the yard to the fence line, but saw nobody, and after a bit of confusion and shrugged shoulders, we put it behind us. My sister Amy, her husband Jay, and my awesome little nephew Adam, who was 4 at the time, had only been living on the property a little over 3 months at this stage. So everything was new basically to all of us. The sounds, the smells, the wildlife, everything was so different from Ireland. I'm a nature buff at heart, love fishing, hunting, etc., but the lands and wildlife of the USA are very different. Irish wildlife can't kill you unless you're really dumb or allergic to bees and get knocked down trying to outrun a sucker of a wasp. Anywho, I had not heard of wood knocks then, but now I know that is what I heard on that day, and was obviously the first encounter, so to speak, and the first time I was aware of them in the area, even though at the time I was not aware that's what I was hearing. Looking back, I don't know how or why I shrugged it off so easily. I guess the new environment had a huge part to play in why I was so ignorant to the early signs of Sasquatch in the area. Our home was pretty large and miles away from any other buildings, homes, or developments. We sat nestled in the middle of nowhere. As I said, our property was bordering the Cherokee National Park. Nothing but wilderness was visible from our backyard, and to the front of the house was more woodland and meadows, I guess you would call them, with small streams. Nothing but forest and mountain views everywhere. It was so incredibly secluded, it's awesome. It is so beautiful at times it took my breath away, and knowing what I know now, I understand how these creatures may go unseen for so long. My sister bought her property, and from what I know, it was empty for around 6 months before she moved in. As the days and weeks passed, I heard whistles, endless wood knocks, and movement in the forest, trees shaking, etc. It baffled all of us, but we explained it away as people hunting or bears and all sorts crossed our minds. Sometimes all of us together, feeling brave, investigated the surrounding woods but found nothing. I have to add, we never felt in danger, but we were always cautious with Adam and always kept a close eye on him while he played outdoors. So as I've said so far, we've heard all these strange sounds and movements that had gone on for weeks. My sister said it had happened a few times before I arrived that she was aware of, but she was always cautious with Adam because of the wildlife and the vast open wilderness and forest they inhabit. So other than making sure he was safe at all times, she didn't give it much thought and put it down to wildlife. But now it was becoming the family mystery and a basis of many sick jokes. Us Irish have twisted minds and strange humor, so getting dragged into the forest by bears or eaten alive by flesh-eating possums was the common joke to my poor sister by myself and Jay. Halfway through August, the realness of what was happening finally landed, and I became aware of what was really in the forest surrounding our home. It was the weekend, and myself and Adam went on an adventure, checking out the area, hunting for treasure, finding weird creatures. You know how it is with 4-year-olds. Everything is awesome and mind-blowing, and so we crossed the fence line and spent a couple hours foraging for critters and catching them in jars, watching birds, etc. Never straying too far from our home because his little legs and all, but we went far enough all the same, and had stopped and sat on a long dead tree trunk that lay in the small open area within the woodland. After my phone rang and a chat with my sister, it was time to head back. It was barbecue time. When I got off the phone, Adam was laughing, staring off into the distance, making faces. I had been sitting beside him on the log, but stood up after the phone rang to get it from my pocket and was moving, walking, and kicking dirt as you do on the phone. As I said, he was giggling and pulling faces, looking ahead of us just beyond the open area where we were sitting. I asked him curiously, "What you laughing at, buddy? What you doing?" And his reply sent literal chills down my spine. "Copying the brown boy. He laughed. He's really, really funny." "What boy?" I said, while I bent down and lugged Adam up into my arms. He's pretty small for 4, and my protective instinct kicked in as 100 thoughts crossed my mind. He pointed to an area with large trees and bush that looked impenetrable, about 15 feet from us. "He has a funny face and was doing it like this," he said, while grinning fully. "Where is he?" I whispered. And I noticed how quiet the woods seemed, or maybe it was just my fear and shock, but everything felt quieter. I stepped towards the trees where he pointed, with Adam in my arms, and heard what I swear was the sound like chimps make. The unmistakable hoots of a monkey, only so much deeper, coming from the left in the woodland. And it froze me in place. It was like I knew not to move closer to the trees where Adam pointed. With my heart pounding, knowing something wasn't right, everything felt wrong, I turned, gripping Adam tight, and started moving back towards home. Adam was facing behind us as I held him and shrieked with excitement and laughter. "There he is!" I turned before he had the words out, and crossing where we had been sitting, moving away from where he pointed, was a small, hairy, human-looking boy. A little taller than Adam, but so much wider and covered in hair from head to toe. It wasn't a boy. It wasn't anything I had ever seen. It stopped for a split second and looked at me, but another loud hoot that seemed closer than before snapped it away from looking at me and seemed to shock it into moving, I think. It lunged so fast in behind trees towards where the sound was coming and was out of sight in literally a couple of seconds. I was frozen as Adam tried to wiggle out of my arms, and I realized how heavy he was getting. A million thoughts crossed my mind. What the bleep was that? It was not human. I flung Adam on my back, told him to hold on tight, and quickly covered the ground back to the fence line, feeling watched and followed and hearing branches cracking and deep grunts as I moved. Within 15 minutes, give or take, I was back over the fence on our property and put Adam down and told him to run to his mammy. I could see Jay, my sister, and 2 of their friends at the side of the house sitting on the bench next to the barbecue as Adam ran over. I turned and looked back over the fence and was overwhelmed with the feeling that I was being watched as I scanned for movement and any sign of danger. I looked back at Adam, and he was already on the bench beside Amy. The image of the brown boy, as Adam called him, ran back through my mind as I tried to make sense of it. He, well, I'm fairly sure it was a he, was chestnut in color, around 3.5 foot tall, because it was definitely a bit taller than Adam, and he's pretty small for 4. It had hair about 3 inches long all over its body, but its face was free of hair. Its skin on the face was brown, too, but a different shade, like a tan, but it looked like leather, I guess. Deep eyebrow sockets with very dark, almost black eyes, very like an ape with a large eyebrow ridge. Its arms were abnormally long, and its body frame, for something so small, looked so odd. It was so wide, but somehow looked lanky too because of its arms. But it looked powerful as well, or like it was going to be powerful. The only way I can explain it is like when you see a foal from a horse. You can tell by its proportions and body shape, length, and etc., that it's going to be a big animal, even when it's so small. Like you can tell a thoroughbred filly is going to be a lot taller than, let's say, a cob filly just by its body shape and form and so on. That's the impression I got, like this thing is going to be huge just by its proportions and muscular development. I knew it was young. It just looked young. Its face and its height, obviously, but it also moved like someone young, far more agile and fast than Adam, even though it wasn't much taller than him. Its head was so wide and oddly shaped, and its mouth looked huge. I understand why Adam grinned so wide with all of his teeth showing, saying he'd done it like this, 'cause his mouth looked abnormally large for his face. The chest was defined, not shockingly massive, but muscular all the same for its size. It was definitely in good shape, being so small, and not much hair on the chest, but some hair there definitely. The only place completely without hair was the face. As far as I could see, its legs were thick, and even through the hair I could see muscular development. The legs were strong but short-looking for his body. The arms were definitely longer than the legs. I don't remember if the hands or feet had hair. I was so glued to the face and eyes. I literally froze when we made eye contact. When it lunged away out of sight, I was still frozen in place for a second when it hit me. If that was a young one of these things, there were adult ones like that in the area. My heart skipped a beat and I realized the hoot I heard was probably the parent. I could still feel the adrenaline rushing through my body and realized my hands were shaking. Then another realization. Bleeping Bigfoot. I just saw a bloody little Bigfoot. What the actual bleep? A baby Bigfoot was making faces at my nephew. All these thoughts were rushing through my mind when I heard movement to my right in the woods. I looked over the fence in the area and watched and listened, and then I heard more tree knocks from deep in the woods, definitely a lot further away. I turned and jogged straight over towards my sister, pulled her aside, and told her everything. After a lot of convincing, she believed I saw something and believed that Adam saw something, but she insisted it wasn't what I thought it was, so I stopped trying to convince her. But Jay believed me, and had many experiences himself up to that point, but no sightings. Just sounds in the wood that he had kept to himself in fear of sounding crazy. My sister knew he believed in crazy things, in aliens and Illuminati. He was a total conspiracy buff, but neither of us could convince Amy of what I saw. What it did do, though, was make us all a little more tense and cautious while out and about, and especially in the yard with Adam. Countless times I asked Adam to explain what he saw, and from what he has told me, when my phone rang is when he first saw the brown boy peer out from behind the tree. From the face he made and showed me, I think the creature was sniffing the air and was smiling like a chimp does, unless it really was playing, making faces at him like he believed, and was peeking out every moment or two while I was on the phone, making Adam laugh. With the whole encounter and what I saw, I began to question my own memory of the events and deny to myself what I had seen, and tried to rationalize it over and over in my head. But I couldn't forget its face, its eyes, the sound and hoot in the woods. I couldn't explain it in any other way than Bigfoot. No matter how I tried to make sense of it, the only thing that made sense was Bigfoot. These things exist. Why are we not told about this? None of it made sense, and I found it so hard to even say the word Bigfoot when me and Jay would talk. It made me feel like I was losing it, I guess. I knew how crazy it sounded, and I wasn't even sure if Jay truly deep down believed what I saw, because I wouldn't believe it if he had told me. I really believe the only way to truly convince someone of what you saw is if they have experienced it themselves. Back when I was having all these thoughts, little did I know it wasn't going to be long before Jay and my sister had their own encounters and sightings, and how many more all of us as a family were going to experience. So there you go. That's Adam's encounter that he had with his nephew out there on the border of Tennessee and North Carolina in the Cherokee National Forest. You'll notice that when I was reading the story, I said Cherokee National Park, just in case I didn't want to change that, but based on the location and the area that he was describing, I believe that he was talking about Cherokee National Forest. With that in mind, one thing that we need to remember is that this person is from Ireland, so the difference between a national park and a national forest May not be as clear to him as it is for us here in the U.S., but Cherokee National Forest, it does border Tennessee and North Carolina and matches the description that he was giving. So I believe it was just an error of labeling. So if we look at the map right here, you see this little teeny tiny gray dashed line? That's the border. There's Tennessee, and over here is North Carolina. And when I went looking through the reports for all of the counties along this border, granted, there's quite a few reports out there, but when I went looking, I decided to specifically focus on reports about kids. Primarily, I was checking because of the North Carolina and the boy and the bear. Some people believe it's Bigfoot encounter, but that's way on the other end of North Carolina. This is towards the Tennessee side of North Carolina. And when I went looking through these counties, there's actually quite a few encounters that involve either kids or teens. Some of them mention families, but they don't specify the ages. But all in all, along this border here, on either side, I found 8 encounters involving either families or kids. When you look at the border between Tennessee and North Carolina on the topographical map, you can see that this is a mountainous area. It's part of the Appalachian Mountains. And this is Cherokee National Forest. Then there's, you know what? I'm not going to try to pronounce that one. So when you look at the topographical map between Tennessee and North Carolina, you can see that this is pretty much a unbroken band of mountains going on through here. So you can kind of just look at the general swaths of counties as you're searching through here. And what I found is in Tennessee, in Carter County, there was a 15-year-old that had an encounter with a Bigfoot. Sevier, there was 2 separate family encounters separated by a decent amount of time, so they aren't the same being repeated twice. In Monroe County, Tennessee, there was a 15 and a 16-year-old that together had witnessed a Bigfoot there. And in North Carolina, in Madison County, there was a family that had an encounter with Bigfoot. And there's actually specifically some kids that were playing and were getting callbacks from Bigfoot by, doing hoops and hollers. In Mitchell, there was also some kids that had an encounter with Bigfoot. And in Avery County, North Carolina, there was a family that had an encounter with a Bigfoot. If you want to look those up further, you can go to Squatchable, look up those counties, and you'll be able to find those links to the BFRO, or you could just go to the BFRO and use their map to look those up as well, for the counties, that is. So basically, in looking around, what I'm finding is that this region has actually a pretty decent amount of history of kids encountering Bigfoots in these mountain areas. And I didn't write it down, but this is actually a pretty decent percentage of the actual sightings. Most of these sightings appear to only happen when there are kids and teens involved. And I find it really fascinating that some of these are families, so it's, moms and dads are seeing these creatures as well as the kids. When I was looking through the reports, though, I didn't see any that referred to a juvenile Sasquatch, but the behavior that was in the encounter definitely rings true for a youthful creature along with a kid, a human kid. That kind of mimicry and playing around and stuff like that, we all do that as kids. So it seems like it would be something very genuine that would be happening if you had 2 juveniles of 2 separate species that could make faces together. It seems like it would be something that they would do. So what do you think of this encounter? What do you think of the description that he gave? My goodness, he detailed pretty much everything. He got a really good look at this creature. One thing I've thought was interesting about his encounter is that he described it as having chestnut hair. And one thought I was having is, Are they like us in that if you're born with lighter colored hair, there's a decent chance that as you get older, reach puberty, or have children, that your hair color tends to darken up? So maybe this juvenile that was chestnut at the time of this encounter may darken up to a deeper auburn or maybe a brown shade. I wonder about that, and I think that'd be kind of fascinating to see if anybody has noticed a common color among the juveniles, if they tend to be the lighter shade, and then when they see larger ones in the area, if maybe they're darker shades, kind of indicating that transition through hormonal changes. Well, I know this report was definitely very descriptive, a little bit long, a little bit wordy, but I'm really glad that you stuck around through it because, like I said, I love this encounter. I mean, wow. And thank you so much for sharing, Adam. And I know that you mentioned that you had some other encounters in that area. We would love to hear them and share them with everybody else. Well, I'll see you down in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you guys thought of this encounter, any ideas that you maybe picked out and teased out of this encounter that maybe I missed looking at. And if you know of any other encounters in that region that maybe haven't been put up on BFRO that involves kids in that region, I think that'd be really awesome to hear about those. Or if it's not even in this region, if it's in other regions, any particular kid, juvenile, Bigfoot interactions that you've seen out there, feel free to share them in the comments. Well, I will see you guys down there, and please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye!